Three, two, one. And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. For anybody watching, thank you very much for watching. And we are on day 4 of Stellar Blade. And before we get into it here, I do have a few announcements. So last day I streamed was on Tuesday, which I believe was 22nd. And this week I said was going to be a little bit, hectic as far as like work and everything. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to stream as much, not necessarily because of work, but because there was a winter storm that kind of hit America and the central area and going all the way over to the east. And Texas was somewhat affected, but we really didn't get anything. I could have streamed and it probably would have been perfectly fine, but I didn't want to take any chances in case power outages or internet going down and, be streaming and then, so I decided to just hold off. But it was kind of a nothing burger for us here in Texas, for most of us. So not a big issue, but that doesn't mean it wasn't that for other people. So that was one reason. The other reason was the fact that I had mentioned that this game has, it's a good game. I very much like the game, but I've complained a lot about the controls and some of the issues that are clearly there. And I have, first of all, I believe fixed the controls mostly, not 100%, but about as good as one could expect. So let me get into it here. So first off, in the control scheme, you have your default controls, and you can somewhat modify these, not completely, because there are certain controls that the developers will not allow you to either erase or change. For example, going down here, let's see, like your menu button, you can't change that. No reason not to be able to do that. And photo mode, like if I wanted to just not use photo mode at all, I can't just erase, or disable these commands. And why would I need to maybe do that? Well, if I decide to remap the buttons to something else that I want, I can do that, but then I get a conflict. So for example, if I change this button to R1, I now get a conflict, and that conflict is going to be with whatever, the other button is, which would be my strong attack. Now, obviously, if you're a type of person that uses the default controls, this doesn't matter to you. But if you like to remap, this is a bit of a problem. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and restore that. So I had to go in and remap the base controls to something that would moderately work for me. But even with this, it doesn't really work too well, because on a controller, you're limited to so many buttons. And because your limitation of so many buttons versus keyboard and mouse, and you're being forced to use buttons in a configuration that the devs want you to use, where you can't either delete them or or remap them to something else, it really puts you in a very awkward position of being able to remap controls. And then furthermore, you have what is known as, and I've been wanting developers to actually do what I'm about to explain here for a very long time. This is the first game that I've seen it do, other than First Berserker Kazan. And that is shift keys, where you press a button and then it shifts to another layer or another option, and then you get multiple other commands. In this instance, if I press L2 and then I press, any of the face buttons, it does a completely different command. Well, I'm sure it's been done in other games, but the only other game that I've had it actually be set up that way would be First Berserker Kazan. If it was another game, it maybe was just one other command, but I'm talking like a multitude of commands. But in this game, they give you 2 shift buttons to have to deal with. And it's cool because you get more button options, but it's bad when you cannot remap the buttons in the configuration that you want. And furthermore, you also get, let me get out of this. You also get into a situation where you've got multiple combo buttons. This is the norm. This is what a lot of us are used to from a developer. So we're getting this, and we're getting all of this in addition to, pressing this. And where's the other one at? Oh, well, actually, both of these. So the button controls really start to get very congested and cluttered, at least for a controller, especially if you want to be able to remap your button configuration. So that does become a little bit of a challenge and or problem. However, some developers will allow you to do what I would call hybrid controls. And what that is, and I'll attempt to explain, it's not very difficult, is allows you to use both controller commands and keyboard commands mixed with a controller. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up using, let me see if I can bring that up. So those buttons there would be the equivalent to the other two shift buttons that I showed on the controller side, with the exception that you only need one shift button, not two. So what I ended up doing is I remapped my front face buttons to 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then the Alt button, I put that as my parry button. And then that also will allow me to shift over to my other buttons. And that frees up a couple of extra buttons that I don't need to use on the controller now. And it does work. It was a lot of bullshit to get that to work, but fortunately it does work. Now, so that's like problem number one with the controls. It's just, and this is going to be the same way on whether you're playing on console or the PC. The problem is console has it much worse because they're not going to be able to do this. At least on the PC version, we'd be able to do this. I would not be able to play this game on console because of the way the controls are set up. So fortunately on PC, we've got the best of both worlds of having both console controls and keyboard KBM controls. So that's hurdle number one. Now, the other problem with this game, and like I said, part of this is also my own fault, and I'm going to get into why some of this is my own fault. Okay, so I have been mentioning and complaining quite extensively my issues with the platforming in the game and the jank of being able to control my character. Now, the combat feels good. I've said that. It feels really good. But when you're navigating through the world, whether you're swimming or platforming, it just feels very jank. And my character doesn't want to do what I command it to do. Now, I know some people be like, would probably just blame me as the user, and I can understand that. You don't know my history of gaming. For all I know, I could be an idiot. You don't know if I'm an idiot, or you don't know if I'm a skilled gamer, or something in between. So here's what I use as a bit of a reference. This game is kind of an action RPG. Is it a Souls game? Not even close. But it does have similarities in regards to the combat. So I have what I use as a controller template within the Steam Remap software, which is what this is. And what I do is that template, whenever I get a new action RPG, I basically migrate that over. Let me show how that works. So over here, you have your Steam controller options for this particular game, for Stellar Blade. And let me go ahead and bring up the annotations. That'll make it easier. Up here at the top, you've got the different controllers that it will support, and you can enable and disable whatever you want. So over here, you've got, your recommended, and then you've got your own layouts. Then you got templates. If you make a template, like for example, if I want to basically take a template that I've made, like for example, I've got a template for Sekiro, so I can import that in and use it for another game. That's what I did for this game. And that template was derivative of my first Berserker Kazan template. So they're all the same. They're all set up the same. Anyways, let me get back out of that. So when I bring the template in, what I end up usually needing to do is I have to go in and do a little bit of button remapping because this is a different game. But most of the controls are going to be the same. For example, the left analog stick, the right analog stick, the dodge button. Some games have a jump, some don't. Souls games, with the exception of Elden Ring, don't have a dedicated jump button. Even though you can jump in Souls games, it's a combination of buttons, but Elden Ring gave us a dedicated jump button. Anyways, I know you probably want to get to the point. The point I'm trying to make is when I imported the template for my other games, mind you, the template has worked for all my Souls games: Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring. It's worked with Liza P. It's worked with First Berserker Kazan. And all of those games, I had zero issues with the controls. I import that same template for this game, Stellar Blade, and I had a horrendous amount of problems with the controls. And the problem really comes down to the thumbstick. So let me get into that. So over here, actually, let me go to the menu. Over here in the joysticks, you've got what is known as the joystick behavior. And if you will notice, there's this thing known as dead zones. And normally I set that to custom. And then I will go in, because this is how my other one is set up, my other template, and I will set that to circle. And that's what's worked for me. So like I said, it's already set up in the template. However, the way the developers did this game, it did not work. And it was causing me issues whenever I was trying to platform from a pole, either swinging back and forth or sliding left to right. So anyways, I did try switching to cross, and that helped improve it. It was better, but it still was kind of jank. And that, I think I tried on day 3, but I was still having some problems with it. So anyways, what I ended up doing is just turning off the dead zone. So it's no longer applying the Steam dead zones. It's using whatever the controller that I'm using, which is the default. I'm using a kind of a hybrid controller, which is like a PS4, PS5, Xbox controller. It's on my website. It's like the Vigi Pro controller. I can't remember the name of it. But anyways, once I set it to no dead zone and I started running and doing my tests, it seemed to fix the problems with the platforming. My controller, as far as controlling my character, I would say almost 100% fixed. I mean, for the most part, it fixed it. Like, I can play and I can now do the platforming that I couldn't do before. So that's one of the major problems. And I'm going to take half the blame for that because it is a custom configuration and it is something set up by Steam, by the way. So I take some blame for that because I'm using something that is out of the norm. But I also do put a little bit of the blame on the developers as well, because this is a default control scheme that works for all the other action RPGs, except for this one. So unless you happen to know a little bit more about setting up controls, and I'm going to brag here, I'm a pro at this because I've been doing this for many, many years, and it's something I'm very well versed at. It just took me a while to solve this problem because I've never run into this problem before. And when you run into a problem you've never run into, it does make it a bit of a challenge. But I at least figured out what the problem was and how to fix it. So I eventually went in, like I said, I basically changed it to no dead zone. Now, I I think I neglected to mention this. So in my template, I have two profiles. And if you notice up at the top, there are two. One says menu, one says game. So the menu is basically the default control buttons that are, set by default by the game. So whatever the game is, I leave it at that. And why do I have it that way? Whenever I go into a menu system, if I open the menu to navigate my gear, or if I'm going to talk to an NPC or something like that, I switch over to this, and it basically restores all the defaults while it's active, and it allows me to basically do what I need to do by the default controls. But then once I switch over to the game profile, and this is all set to a button that I have set up on my touchpad, so it's easy to swap between the two on the fly. But once I switch over to my game profile, this is a completely different profile with buttons that are not going to work in the menu system at all. And this is what I use for my combat. Now, mind you, the controller that I have is a Pro controller. So there are 4 rear buttons on the back that I can program to whatever I want. And what I generally do is the D-pad buttons I never use. I don't generally use them, meaning I don't take my thumb off the left thumbstick, except for like if I'm in a menu, ever, because I want to maintain mobility. And I can't do that if I'm having to press buttons on the D-pad. So what I do is I remap those buttons to whatever else, and then I remap buttons on the rear to whatever I need. It gets way too complicated. I'm not going to go into it because we'll be here for over an hour if I explain all this. But in short, it allows me to stay mobile, to be able to continue to heal, do certain movements, attack, change gear, because sometimes you'll have an option to, go into the menu, change gear, whatever. And it's just much more fluid, much quicker. So that is pretty much why I do that. Now, the other problem with the game, and this is 100% on the developers, and we'll get out of this and we'll go into the settings, is, let's go to the control here. That setting right there, toggle sprint. Now you get 2 sprint buttons in this game. You get the toggle sprint and you get the dodge sprint. Now, so you have 2 sprint buttons, 2 sprint options. The problem with the way the developers did this game, and this is why I praise First Berserker Kazan, because it's set up the exact same way with a major difference, is if you look at the Souls games only have 1 button, the dodge button, and it's dodge and sprint. But From Software, and this is, I don't know if you call this genius, but it is very smart of them to do this, is when you press the dodge button, if you tap it, you dodge or you sidestep, depending if you're playing Bloodborne or Sekiro or a Souls game or Elden Ring, whatever. We'll just keep it simple. We'll just call it dodge. But if you press and hold, you won't do a full dodge. You'll do like a little mini dodge, and you go into a sprint. Well, in this game, when you press the dodge, if you want to sprint, you do a full dodge. It doesn't just bypass the dodge and go into a full sprint like it does in the Souls games. And First Berserker Kazan is almost like this. You still do almost a full dodge, or it might actually be a full dodge. And I played through half the game that way, and I didn't like it because it's like this. I don't like if I want to sprint, I just want to sprint. If I want to dodge, I want to dodge. I don't want to press the button to sprint and then have it dodge and then go into a sprint. Sometimes you're on a short platform and you need to get some momentum of sprinting. And if you dodge, you end up going off the platform, or you don't have enough space to get to a full sprint. Well, that's where the toggle sprint on the left on the L3 button comes into play. In First Berserker Kazan, the developers allow you to go into the menu, and they give you the option to toggle it on and off. Very much like if you go into the ranged attack over here. No, not that one. Where is it? Okay, so switch to range mode. The developers give you the option. You can either hold the button or you can have it as a toggle. Unfortunately, they did not give us this for the sprint, and they should have. This should be by default, especially on PC. Console's a different story. In my research, there is a division of gamers on console that like it and some that hate it. The ones that hate it because of the fact that it wears out their thumbstick. I don't like it because I'm heavy-handed and I would end up pressing the button accidentally. So I wouldn't want it on there, which is why I put my sprint on my left trigger. So anyways, because they don't give you the option to have as a hold, it's a toggle. And that makes it a real problem when you're trying to have a dedicated sprint that doesn't dodge and you don't want it as a toggle. Now, I know some people be like, well, I'm fine with it or whatever. Good for you. I'm glad it works for you. For me, it does not. I prefer it to be a hold because it gives me more control over my movement than I otherwise would. Toggle doesn't give me the control that I want. It forces me to have to press buttons unnecessarily that I wouldn't otherwise have to press. So what I ended up doing is on day 2, I attempted to try doing this. Let me go into the settings here. And if I go to triggers, what I attempted to do is I attempted to put this is my left stick, or not left stick, my left trigger button that I've set to sprint. And what I attempted to do is I put the left stick click for sprint to toggle on when I pressed it. And then I put it as a toggle off when I released. Unfortunately, that was not working. So then I ended up on day 3 going in and putting the left outer ring command as the sprint. So whenever I got to the outer ring, it would activate. That was not working because it kept putting me in and out of sprint. And on top of that, it was causing me to sprint when I really didn't want to sprint. So it was breaking the controls more. I'll take the blame for that. I was just trying to see if I could find something that worked. That was the worst. It just wasn't going to work. Then by sheer accident, I tried something different. I went back to setting up the left trigger the way I had it set up before, only this time, instead of using left stick click to activate the sprint as I press down, I do that, but then on the release, I set it to the shift key, which is the keyboard command for sprint. And for whatever reason, this allows for a better transition to release the sprint functionality. So it acts as a hold rather than as a toggle. But there's more to it than that. I actually had to go into the settings and set a delay for when the button is pressed to delay 100 milliseconds and then in delay to 25 milliseconds. That's for the initial press. And then for the release, I had to do the same thing, but I set this one to 50 and 25. So now, whenever I press the left trigger, it functionally works as it would if I were playing a Souls game as a hold. Is it 100% perfect? No. But I would say, based on where I was on day 1 and day 2 and day 3, which day 1, I didn't even realize how bad it was. And day 2 is really when I realized how bad it was. I would say it was maybe 60% functional. And then day 3 was worse because I tried to use the thumbstick, which became like non-functional really at all. I would say this method is about 90 to 95% functional. It's not going to be 100% until the devs change it. The game's already been out for a while. I don't think they're going to change it. There are plenty of people that have asked for it, very much like Remnant from the Ashes. I don't know why developers do this. It's not necessary. Just give us the option to toggle it or hold it in the menu. The only reason I can think of why they don't do it is because of money funding. But honestly, and I forgot to mention, I did attempt to use an auto hotkey script, and I tried to actually set that up using the thumbstick and then setting the thumbstick to WASD, WASD, because I was able to get it to work in Horizon Zero Dawn, because I brought out my old hotkey script, and but I couldn't get it to work in this game. Anyways, so that for the most part covers a lot of the so-called problems that I was having with the controls. So there's that. Another problem I was having was, and this is not game related, this is stream related, the audio for my stream. So the music wasn't really balanced too well. I've got it perfectly balanced now. I've done plenty of testing. So there won't be any issues with the music being too loud or too low, unless I forget to like lower the volume for like certain cutscenes or whatever. The other audio issue was my mic. So my mic has a noise gate. I use a Shure SM7B, and the mic that I use is a proximity mic. And this mic, most people don't use correctly. A lot of people will. So what is a proximity mic? A proximity mic is basically a mic that needs to be roughly within about a 1-inch distance from your mouth. You could actually even have your mouth slightly touching it, and that's where it's best going to perform. However, if you go and watch like people like Joe Rogan or other podcasters that use the mic, even Asmongold, they're using it, but they're not using it correctly. Is it working for them? Sure. But the reality is the mic is supposed to be up to your mouth within about 1 inch. I didn't know this either, by the way. I used this mic incorrectly for years before I realized that was the case. And then once I realized it, I retuned it, adjusted a few things, and I started using it correctly. However, it does bring about another issue. And this is one I was not aware of until I started playing this game. So this game, because I've turned off the music and I'm listening to my own, and there's not a lot of ambient background audio, what's happening is my noise gate is pretty much wide, or was almost wide open, and you can hear my breathing. Now, normally, if I'm in conversation with somebody, you're not going to hear me breathing. But when the mic is like literally 1 inch away from my mouth, you're going to hear me breathing. Is it as bad as Darth Vader? No, but that's just how it is. And in all transparency, I am a mouth breather, like the Duffer Brothers would insult me as and paint me as low IQ. But actually, a lot of people are mouth breathers, not at the fault of their own and not because they're low IQ, but because they may have what is known as narrow nasal passages. And I learned about that from Joe Rogan back in, I think, 2015 or 2016, because he did a podcast talking about it and talking about how he had surgery. Now, while some people may call me low IQ, and I would not be offended by that, I don't think too many people would say that about Joe Rogan. Although I do have issues with some of the Joe Rogan's idiotic stances on some things, especially when it comes to politics, but that's besides the point. Rogan talked about how he had to go and have surgery done because he was a mouth breather and he didn't have enough airflow through his nasal passages. Once he did that, he was able to start breathing more through his nose. And I did not know that. And that was what it also can cause issue with your teeth and your gums and things like that. My grandfather, highly intelligent man, he was German. He was a heavy mouth breather. He was like Darth Vader, but mouth breather. If he were using a Shure SM7B, I don't know how, he probably couldn't use it because it would just be like, I don't know if the noise gate would even work because he just was a very loud mouth breather, very much like Darth Vader. But I was noticing that when I was doing my last stream, I could hear it and it sounded horrible. I was like, like it irritated me. So if it irritates me, it's definitely going to irritate other people. I fixed it. You won't hear that anymore. I just adjusted the noise gate so that will no longer be an issue. So audio's fixed, controls are fixed, and all that. And yeah, so I believe, and I've tested the controls in this game pretty extensively. I believe going forward that this game will become much more enjoyable. And I have said this is a good game, but the controls are pretty jank. The controls are still jank at the fault of the developers due to the sprint and the way they did the analog stick. But if you are on PC, there are things you can do to fix it. It just requires a lot more finessing than I think the norm. But I do like the game, and I do think it's a lot of fun. I don't really like all the extra side quests that just feel kind of pointless and unnecessary, like going and collecting those cans. When I collect the can, like, I don't feel like when I go through a process of getting through a puzzle or a tough event in a game, when I'm rewarded, I don't expect every reward to be like, oh, this is great, I can use this. Because when you're playing a Souls game, I would say at least 50% of the time when I'd collect things, it's things I don't need or could use or whatever. But I would say the other 50% of the time, it is something I could use. In this game, the overwhelming majority of items that I've collected are just things I don't need or could really use, like the cans, the outfits. I mean, the outfits are cool, but it's not really like something that's like, ooh, like, you know, something to upgrade. The main things that are upgrades to me are like the cores and whatever I'd use for like specific weapons or whatever, or my pod. And I'm not saying that, and they give you plenty. I'm not saying the game doesn't give you plenty of those. It does. But I almost feel like they should have done something a little bit different on the reward system, where if you're going to collect like a can, for example. By the way, I did look up the cans, and apparently when you collect them all, it gives you the ability to unlock more, to carry more grenades and things like that. I don't know if you need to collect them all or if you collect a certain amount or whatever the case is, but I don't remember that being explained. I looked it up because it was kind of annoying me that I was going around collecting things that aren't meaningful. You know, like, why am I collecting this stuff? What is the point of this? So anyways, I don't think they did a very good job on balancing the things that you are going through the game and collecting and feeling like it was worth it for the reward. That's just how I feel, is at least at this point in the game. But there may be a point where it's like, oh, okay, I see why we collected this. For example, when we went in, let me go ahead and get into the game here. We needed to collect these other cans. See if I can bring those up. So these stellar tiers, we needed to collect all of these in order to be able to purchase the like our outfits, or one of our, like our Nier Automata outfit. So that was kind of cool, and that was pretty self-explanatory early on, but we didn't really know. It wasn't until later when we saw the, you know, the bus guy driving around, and then we saw the currency. Now, maybe it was explained in one of these data banks, but in all honesty, if I read every one of these fucking things, this game will turn into 100 hours easy or more. And I do like when developers put lore in the game and they put databanks, but this is reminding me of Control. If anybody ever played Control, there are literally over 1,000 notes in that game. And I started reading them all in the beginning, just like I started to do it in this game. But once I started to realize that there are so many in the game, it's like, because you've got these, and then you've got the documents, passcodes don't really matter. It really starts to become a little overwhelming. And it's like, okay, maybe if I do another playthrough, I'll read through a few of them every time I maybe do a playthrough if I replay the game. But am I going to read all of these on a first playthrough? Some people will. I'm not. I'm not interested in reading all this. So anyways, now that I've rambled for about 30 minutes here, I can't believe we got all that covered in that amount of time. So I thought it was going to be longer. We can start playing. So we are in a whole new area. There are a couple things in the previous area in the wasteland that we could go back and get, but we'll wait because we're probably going to have to go back later anyways. And there are things that I don't think are really of significant importance. So we're going to go ahead and just, continue from here. Okay. So, oh, you know what I forgot to do? I need to check to see. Okay, we're good on ammo. I wanted to make sure we had full ammo before we leave the house. That was another problem I was having with the sprinting, is being able to jump and dodge in the air, because if I was holding it, sometimes the sprint would break. With the way I got it set up now, like I said, it works almost perfect as I would want it to, without actually having the toggle hold option. So I guess we're going down. Now, the things I do like about this game, I like, this sounds a bit of a contradiction, I like that they have so many hidden areas in the game, and you really have to look. And it's a little weird because I mentioned at the beginning of the game that I would like to turn off the yellow paint. The yellow paint is almost like 50% of the game as regards to where it leads you, because there are so many hidden areas in this game that I've had to either find or have found that don't have yellow paint. You just kind of have to explore and figure out. I've never seen that from a developer. It's usually either, full yellow paint or none at all. And I'm not even sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Just something that I've observed so far. But I do love that there's a lot of hidden areas in this game.
The building is old. Most things don't even work.
An underground facility? Is it some kind of bunker?
It became one, yeah, but it was a subway station first. The subway moves people around the city using a web-like system. Or, well, it used to do that. All right then, let's go get us an Alpha Core.
Did you locate the core?
One moment, please. I'm rebuilding the map data.
I'll go inside first.
Would those explode if I... Yep, they will. Okay. Those are actually really handy for some of the boss encounters, if you learn to use them right. I don't think this is going to open. Nope. Okay. And I have been listening to the game soundtrack offline. I downloaded it and put it on my music server. It's good. but I know if I were to listen to it continuously through the game, I would start to not enjoy it. I like to keep things mixed up, but I do think it's a very good soundtrack.
Watch out! This place is old. Structural integrity might be compromised.
Right. Can we dodge through this? Nope. That was another thing I had a challenge when I swapped my left trigger for sprint, because that's what I had my range attack on. I had to find a button for that. So I put it on my right bumper, or excuse me, my left bumper. And then I also put the option to change the ammo on the right bumper as a more of a control shift option. And then my left trigger, or excuse me, my right trigger is my fire. That, I forgot to mention that was a bitch to set up, because you're having all these different controls to shift around and move to get them to all synergize and work. I think the most challenging game I've ever had.
Why don't we keep that door open? We don't know what might happen.
No, we're opening it. I don't give a fuck. The most challenging game I've ever had to set up a control scheme for was Horizon Zero Dawn. And that was when I was playing with a controller. But when it got ported to PC, I would only play that game with keyboard and mouse now.
Looks like they used to work here. Let's take a look.
Because there are a fuck ton of controls on Horizon Zero Dawn.
Hold on. I heard something. Behind you!
Oh, it's Symbiont. Got a host and a parasite.
He was using a dead body as its host.
This should be fun. All right. Oh, there's a... Oh, we missed that. Oh, there's an enemy there, another parasite. Yeah, a little rusty there. Still made it. Okay, so that's the shortcut we just did. Wow, that's not even working at all. Let's try that. Okay, that worked.
Oh, I've never seen an AT use a corpse as its host.
We'll probably encounter more of them soon enough.
I hope not. How about you go up and take a look around?
That never gets... Oh, shit! That never gets old. So the parasites...
I'm picking up a supply signal. It's an ambush!
Oh, yeah. So he said to go up. What's up here?
I'm seeing evidence of life.
Here?
So there's two corpses on the ground. Those parasites will probably reanimate those unless we blow. Hold on. That didn't really do much.
Eve, oil drums rolling around here again.
Yep. Alright, I'm gonna need to change that scan button. It's a little bit too powerful. Hey. Let me change that a little bit. I was hoping this was not going to be an issue. Let's put that. Okay, let's see if that works. Okay. I'm a bit heavy-handed, and sometimes I'll press the L3 or R3. That's why I don't like having the sprint on there. It's glowing green. I guess it's nothing. Oh, there's a big one in there. Let's go back over here. Now, I haven't seen this yet in this game, but I think one thing that would be really fucking cool, especially in this new area, is have mimics where you open one of these and maybe 2 or 3 parasites jump out and reanimate a corpse or something like that. Almost like a little mini gauntlet. And then after you kill them, you get whatever loot or whatever. That'd be kind of cool. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that'd be really fucking cool. Saw a... Okay, never mind.
Here as well.
Yes. There are traces of survivors that lived here.
I wonder how long it's been since the sound of a piano echoed down this tunnel.
Whoa. He's gonna reanimate that one. All right, homie. Whoa. Range attack. All right. Is that all you got? Come on. I guess that is all you got. Whoa. Probably should save my ammo. I'm trying to get used to the range attack so I can program that to muscle memory. Now that one wasn't close enough. Let's see if we can move this one over there. Oh, he's shitting out these parasites. Eat that, motherfucker.
That was so gross. Or I guess grosser than usual.
Looked like they slowly took over the train.
Yeah, I see you. All right, what you got? All right.
This place looks safe. Let's rest for a bit.
Whoa, wait a minute. Hold up. Well, I guess we'll do this. I think we're good with those. Sonic grenade? I don't think we have any of those. Whoa. No. Now let's rest. Thought I saw another locker.